Wednesday, just after 11 p.m., Monica Rhodes was driving north past the quiet limits of Toledo, Ohio, with the kind of focus only exhaustion can teach. She had left a long logistics meeting at the southern base 2 hours ago, and every minute since then had been devoted to one thought: get home. No stops, no detours, just the open stretch between obligation and peace. She didn't expect to be anyone's problem tonight. She didn't expect trouble. And she definitely didn't expect to become the story that someone else would brag about in a break room. The SUV she was driving wasn't flashy. It was a government-issued black unit, clean, well-kept, and inconspicuous. It didn't scream status, didn't catch attention, and wasn't meant to. Monica liked it that way. Everything about her, her tone, her decisions, the way she approached the world, was shaped by decades of discipline. After 22 years in uniform, she didn't do chaos. She followed structure. And tonight, structure was telling her, stay in your lane, drive safe, get home. Unbeknownst to her, another kind of energy was brewing a few blocks up, parked along the side of Reynolds Road. Sergeant Blake Donahue sat behind the wheel of his cruiser, sipping coffee that had been sitting too long in a paper cup and scrolling through his phone. It had been a dead shift. Nothing but silence, paperwork, and the hum of streetlights. No arrests, no adrenaline, no action. Just him, waiting for something to happen. And then Monica's SUV passed by. Not fast, not erratic, just unfamiliar. To Donahue, unfamiliar was enough. It didn't matter that she wasn't weaving or speeding. He'd been on the job 15 years, enough to know how to write a report before anything even happened, enough to assume that if something didn't feel right, it probably wasn't, and enough to believe that someone who didn't look like they belonged probably didn't. He tossed his cup, hit the lights, and pulled out. Inside the SUV, Monica noticed the flash behind her immediately. She didn't panic. She didn't assume anything more than a routine stop. She slowed down, merged to the right, and parked along the curb. No drama, no resistance. Her mind had already started filing through what might be wrong. Expired tag? Tail light out? Did the system glitch and flag a government plate? She kept her hands where they needed to be and waited. The cruiser door slammed behind her, but she didn't look back. She knew the rhythm. This wasn't her first time being pulled over in uniform, out of uniform, behind tinted glass, or with credentials in the glove box. What mattered wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Calm, clear, measured. The uniform may have been in the closet, but the rank didn't vanish just because the jacket was off. License and registration. No greeting, no introduction, no explanation. She rolled down the window halfway. "Officer, can I ask why I was stopped?" The flashlight beam caught her eyes. "You were drifting between lanes," he replied. "Didn't signal. Looked like you might have been drinking." There it was, the line. The opener to a longer play. She knew it well. She wasn't swerving. Her focus had been tight, if anything too strict. And the idea that she'd been drinking, at this hour, in this vehicle, after coming straight from a military meeting, wasn't just wrong. It was lazy. But she didn't argue. She knew what happened when someone like her, black, female, confident, pushed too soon, too hard. Instead, she responded with what he asked for. Slowly, methodically, the license, the registration, the ID with a federal seal. "This is a government vehicle. I'm a federal employee." He gave the ID a glance, then smirked. "Military? Yes. Doesn't mean you're above the law." "What? I never said I was." His voice snapped back, harder. "Step out of the vehicle." Monica blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said, step out. I'm doing a sobriety test." The tone had shifted. She heard it. Not caution, not duty. Performance. This was no longer about safety. It was about control. She asked again, clearly. "On what grounds? I've cooperated. I haven't been drinking. I'd like to know the reason." "You refusing a lawful order?" She didn't raise her voice. She asked for clarity. But that wasn't the answer he wanted. He didn't want precision. He wanted compliance. Before she could say more, he reached for the handle, yanked the door open himself. And that's when she turned on her phone's camera. "Just so we're clear," she said, loud enough for the audio to pick up, "this conversation is being recorded." For a split second, something shifted in him. He hesitated, but it didn't stop him. Out now. Monica stepped out. She didn't argue. She didn't resist. She didn't need to, because the moment she hit record, the real story began, and she already knew. Whatever came next, she would be ready. Sergeant Blake Donahue had been wearing the badge long enough to believe it was more than a job. To him, it was an answer. A shield against challenge, a license to be the final word. 15 years on the force had left him with a reputation. Dependable, punctual, no nonsense. New hires learned quickly not to cross him, not to question him. He handled street fights, crash scenes, noise complaints, and the occasional protester with the same blunt efficiency. He liked the authority. He liked the certainty. And he didn't like being tested. When Monica Rhodes asked questions instead of following orders without hesitation, it didn't sit right with him. It wasn't what he expected. He didn't recognize her. Didn't know her name. Didn't know the two bronze stars. Didn't know the decades of service or the strategic operations she had led in and out of the country. All he saw was someone asking why when he wanted yes. Someone not falling in line. And that triggered something he didn't like admitting to, even to himself. He made her do the walk. Under yellow streetlights and a quiet sky, he walked her through the motions like she was a Saturday night bar crawl gone wrong. Straight line, eyes forward, count out loud. He watched her closely, hoping for a stumble, a word out of place, anything. But she didn't trip, didn't slur, didn't waver. It didn't matter. He wrote the citation anyway. Failure to maintain lane. He didn't ask her any further questions. He didn't give her a warning. Just handed her the ticket like it was routine and walked away. Monica didn't argue. She took it, said nothing, and returned to her vehicle. The camera had caught it all. Every line, every silence, every decision. She drove off. To Donahue, that was the end of it. Another stop logged, another form filled. Another quiet night disrupted by a flash of command and then gone. Back at the precinct, he plugged in his body cam, let it upload the footage to the system, and went back to his routine. No notes beyond the basic report. Nothing flagged. No arrest. No incident filed. In the break room the next morning, the story played out like so many others. A quick laugh over coffee with Officer Ramirez. Pulled over some woman last night. Tried to pull rank. Flashed some federal ID like I'm supposed to let her off. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Military? Said so. Monica Rhodes. Thought I'd be impressed. Ramirez's expression shifted just slightly. Wait. Monica Rhodes? You mean Major Rhodes? From Fort Banner? Rhodes, yeah, something like that. She's not just military, Ramirez said. She spoke at the academy last spring. That woman's in charge of operations logistics across the Midwest sector. 2 tours, multiple honors. She's respected. Like, really respected. Donahue shrugged. Doesn't mean anything on my road. She gets stopped like anybody else. Ramirez didn't respond. Just picked up his coffee and walked off. For the first time, Donahue felt a small thread of doubt pull at his confidence. He didn't show it, didn't go back and rewatch the footage, didn't review his tone, didn't consider how it might look from the outside. He told himself the same thing he always did. He followed protocol. He didn't touch her. He didn't arrest her. She got a ticket, nothing more. So when the internal message popped up 3 days later, marked legal review pending, it caught him off guard. The footage was flagged, and a formal complaint had been filed. But it wasn't from the department. It was from outside, Military Legal Counsel. Attached to the case, a personal video taken from inside the SUV, clear audio, time-stamped, and the name on the complaint wasn't buried in a form. It was bold. Plaintiff, Lieutenant Colonel Monica Rhodes. Donahue stared at the screen, blinking once, then twice. He closed the tab. Told himself again it was nothing. She was making noise. Trying to stir the pot, maybe trying to embarrass him. People like that always thought they deserved different treatment, always thought their titles meant they were untouchable. He didn't check the video. He didn't check the records, but others did. A day later, he was called into a closed-door meeting. His supervisor, Captain Reynolds, didn't say much at first, just handed him an envelope. Inside, a formal notice. Civil rights lawsuit, court date, 3 weeks. Donahue let out a laugh that didn't quite land. You're serious? Reynolds didn't laugh. Do you know who she is? I don't care who she is. You should, Reynolds replied, because she has everything documented, from your body cam and hers, and this doesn't look good. I didn't arrest her, but you escalated. You treated her like a criminal. You assumed instead of assessed. Donahue didn't have an answer for that. He left the room feeling like the air had changed, and it had. By that afternoon, the whispers had started. Short glances, long pauses, no direct accusations, but enough to feel it. He wasn't untouchable anymore, not in the way he had been. He told himself it would blow over. It always did. But this time, something told him it wouldn't. By the time the sun rose over Fort Banner, Monica Rhodes was already at her desk. The base was quiet, the early shift just starting to trickle in, but her lights had been on since before dawn. She hadn't slept. Not from fear, not from regret. Her mind had been busy with replayed seconds and sharpened memories. Not the kind that fade. The kind that leave questions hanging in midair, looping over and over until the silence becomes louder than any siren. She had followed orders her whole life, given them, reinforced them, not just because they were rules, but because order mattered, structure mattered. But last night hadn't been structure. It had been impulse wrapped in authority. She had watched it unfold in real time, his tone, his language, the way he jumped straight to control. Not because she was dangerous, because he didn't expect pushback. And still, she hadn't raised her voice, hadn't leaned into outrage. She had stayed calm. That calm was what kept her from becoming a headline. That calm was what had saved her from something worse. But even that calm had limits. And this morning, she had reached hers. This wasn't just about a bad stop or a bogus ticket. It wasn't even about her. She could afford the fine. She could let it slide. But that wasn't the point. She kept thinking of the privates she trained last month. Fresh uniforms, fresh ideals. They didn't have her rank. They didn't have her composure. What would have happened if it were one of them pulled over on a dark road, asked to step out of the car without cause? What would they have done without the title, the years of training, the instinct to de-escalate? She opened her laptop. The email inbox was already filling up. Logistics updates, field assessments, a request to review quarterly allocations. She ignored them for now. Instead, she pulled up the folder on her phone, transferred the video to her desktop, and named the file with the date and time. She didn't watch it again. She didn't need to. She remembered every word. The office door creaked slightly as Sergeant Ellis stepped in. He paused, but didn't sit. Monica looked up. He asked how she was. She didn't pretend. She told him she wasn't okay, but she was handling it. Ellis had seen her deal with pressure. He'd seen her make life-or-death calls in operations rooms with satellite feeds blinking red and green across multiple countries. But he hadn't seen this version of her before. Focused, clear, and holding something sharper than strategy: conviction. She told him the call to the base legal office had already been made. The paperwork was in motion. She wasn't looking for noise. She wasn't chasing headlines or revenge. She was filing a complaint because it was the right thing to do. Ellis asked if she needed backup. She said no, but she appreciated it. Once he left, she opened a blank document and began typing. Line by line, she built the incident log from memory. Time of departure, road taken, approximate mileage, time of stop, the exact words exchanged, the moment the door was pulled open, the moment she hit record. She included the ID she presented, the vehicle classification, her federal status. She flagged every protocol deviation, every time the officer bypassed procedure in favor of pressure. She didn't embellish. She didn't editorialize. She let the facts speak. When she finished, she saved it, attached the video, and sent the packet to the Inspector General's office with the subject line: formal complaint, civil rights violation, unlawful stop. No exclamation marks, no dramatics, just the truth. She sat back, letting the email sit in the sent folder, glowing silently. She knew what this meant. Once it left her hands, there would be no pulling it back. It would escalate. The department would get notified, the officer's name would enter a file, and the chain of command would begin. She didn't want to be at war. She'd seen enough of those. She wanted accountability. That evening, she received a confirmation of receipt. The investigation would begin. Internal legal teams would be looped in. The department would be contacted for statements and footage. Her lawyer had already flagged the incident as potentially violating federal protocols for civil detainment. If it reached the threshold, they would go to court. She didn't flinch, because she knew what happened when people stayed quiet. She'd seen the aftermath. The promotions that passed over the most qualified, the careers that derailed after someone spoke out. The hushed side conversations, the silent corrections that never came. But she also knew the power of proof. Proof was louder than rumor. Proof forced meetings. Proof triggered change. And now, she had it. She didn't broadcast anything on social media. She didn't call the press. She didn't make a speech. She simply documented everything, because that was her job. because she owed it to the ones coming after her, the ones who might one day sit in her chair, wondering what to do when the system didn't live up to its promise. Before leaving her office, she opened her calendar and blocked 3 hours every Friday for the next month. Case prep. No one else would see the entry, but she would. And when the day came to stand in court, she wouldn't be there for herself. She'd be there to make sure someone like her didn't have to do it again. The manila envelope didn't look like much. It wasn't thick. It didn't come with a warning label, just a plain folder with Sergeant Blake Donahue's name typed neatly on the front. He found it wedged into his station mailbox late on a Monday afternoon, sandwiched between a shift calendar and a supply requisition form. He opened it in the parking lot without thinking. Inside was a court summons. He read the name at the top once, then again. It was real. Not an internal review. Not a complaint to be settled over coffee with a superior. This was federal, formal, civil litigation filed in the state court under constitutional grounds. Plaintiff, Lieutenant Colonel Monica Rhodes, charges unlawful detainment, intimidation, abuse of authority. Donahue let out a short, sharp laugh. No way. This wasn't real. She was pushing this? Over a traffic stop? He walked toward his car, folded the summons under his arm, and kept laughing as if the sound alone might collapse the reality behind it. But inside the station, the atmosphere had shifted. No one said anything. No one confronted him. But the eyes lingered longer. Conversations stopped faster when he entered a room. The air carried a different kind of weight. Later that day, Captain Reynolds called him into his office. Closed door, blinds drawn, no paperwork on the desk, no jokes. Just a quiet, slow sentence that started everything. We need to talk. Donahue sat down with his arms crossed, waiting for the part where Reynolds would brush it off, where someone in command would say this wasn't a big deal, that she was overreacting, that he had followed protocol and there was nothing to worry about. That moment didn't come. Instead, Reynolds asked, "Do you even know who she is?" Donahue shrugged. "Does it matter?" "It does now. She acted like I should roll out a red carpet because she's military." Reynolds didn't smile. She's not just military. She's a senior officer, decorated. Her record is clean. She runs multi-state logistics and has access to resources we don't even see. And she has both videos, hers and yours. Donahue shrugged again. "So what? We're just going to apologize because she's important?" Reynolds didn't answer that. Instead, he leaned forward. "This doesn't look like nothing, and it won't stay quiet. The footage is already part of the filing. There's a real possibility of departmental fallout if this hits press. And it will." Donahue didn't speak. For the first time in a long time, he didn't have a line to toss back. He left the office with the same expression he always wore, but his pace had slowed. Around the station, the silence had become noticeable. His reputation, the one that once made rookies nervous and kept others at a distance, was starting to crack. He felt it in the sideways glances, in the changed greetings. He wasn't the unshakable one anymore, and everyone could tell. While that storm churned quietly through the precinct, Monica Rhodes was preparing differently. No cameras, no spotlight, just steady work behind closed doors. Her meetings with legal counsel weren't public. Her filings were clean, fact-based, and detailed. The video was reviewed frame by frame. The timestamps were aligned, the tone analyzed. Her lawyer, Amelia Grant, a seasoned federal litigator, told her this wouldn't be easy. That public cases carried weight. That even when you're right, the blowback could outlast the verdict. Monica listened, took notes, and stayed the course. She wrote everything down, every word she remembered, every instruction she was given, every time the officer raised his voice or denied her a reason. She wasn't emotional about it. She was exact. When asked why she was pursuing the case, she didn't say it was personal. She said it was necessary. This wasn't about a fine. It was about precedent. Because if someone like her, with the training, the poise, the rank, could be treated like she didn't matter, what chance did a 19-year-old private have? What chance did a civilian on their way home from work have? This was about more than that night. This was about the pattern. She remembered how quickly it had happened. No probable cause, no warning, just assumptions, just escalation. Just a man who thought a badge came with immunity. She wasn't looking to make him suffer. She'd make sure it didn't happen again. Back at the station, Donahue was starting to realize the ground under him had shifted. He watched the way other officers avoided eye contact, the way shift assignments began changing without explanation. He told himself they were scared of setting precedent. He told himself they were overreacting. He told himself this would pass. But then the official memo came in. Internal Affairs Review pending. Command staff briefing scheduled. Press inquiry response on hold. And the silence got louder. His body camera footage was cued for legal. Every recorded word, every frame. He hadn't rewatched it yet. He didn't want to. He thought he remembered it well enough. But he didn't remember how it would look. He didn't know how others would interpret the tone, the posture, the refusal to explain himself. He hadn't thought about how clear it would all appear when shown on a screen, replayed in a courtroom, paused at the worst moments. 3 weeks? That's what the summons said. He had 3 weeks before the trial. 3 weeks before everything he built came up for review in front of strangers, lawyers, a judge, and Monica Rhodes. He thought she'd be just another name on a ticket. Now her name was everywhere. And this time, there was no laughing it off. 3 weeks later, the courthouse doors opened quietly on a gray morning. There were no reporters yet, no headlines plastered across newsstands, just rows of chairs filling slowly, some in uniform, some in suits, some in silence. Officers from both the police department and Fort Banner sat spaced throughout the gallery. None spoke. Everyone watched. Monica Rhodes walked into that courtroom the way she walked into every operation briefing she'd ever led, prepared, precise, and without apology. Her uniform was immaculate. Her nameplate and ribbons weren't for display. They were evidence. She wasn't just the woman behind the wheel that night. She was the lieutenant colonel who had commanded convoys through combat zones, directed supply chains under pressure, and held the line when others broke. Across the room, Blake Donahue sat stiffly beside his attorney. He had shaved, worn his best jacket, kept his eyes on the front. But when she entered, he looked, and for the first time since this began, his confidence wavered. This wasn't a traffic court hearing. This wasn't a scolding in a squad room. This was different. When Monica was called to testify, she rose with calm precision. She approached the stand like a soldier walking through protocol. No hesitation, no spectacle. Her voice, when asked to recount the night, didn't waver. She began at the beginning. She was returning from a logistics meeting at the Indiana Guard Reserve. It was late. She was tired. She was driving a government vehicle. She was not swerving. She was not under the influence. She was stopped without explanation. She explained the officer's tone, the repeated demands, the refusal to provide a reason for escalation. She stated clearly that she had identified herself as a federal employee, operating within her duties. She confirmed she had followed every instruction until the situation became unreasonable. When asked if she resisted, she said no. When asked if she disobeyed, she said no. When asked why she began recording, she paused only for a breath. Because experience has taught me that silence doesn't protect you. The room stayed quiet. The jury didn't look at their notepads. They looked at her. Then the video played. First her phone footage, then the body camera footage. 2 angles, one truth. Donahue's voice came through the speakers, sharp and impatient. No greeting, no clarification, just commands. The moment he opened the car door, the way his voice rose, the way he never answered her questions. The jury watched it all. And something shifted in the room. Her lawyer, Amelia Grant, stood and asked only one thing more. "Lieutenant Colonel, what did you hope would happen that night?" Monica didn't embellish. She didn't invoke outrage. "I hope to get home. That's it." When the defense began, Donahue didn't take the stand. His attorney, Charles Brenner, attempted a redirection. Wasn't it possible the officer was just cautious? Wasn't it true that officers need to use their judgment? Didn't she, in fact, begin recording before things escalated? Monica answered without tension. She wasn't erratic. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't resisting. She recorded because she knew what could happen if she didn't. Brenner pressed again. "So you believe officers should not be trusted to act on instinct?" "I believe instinct without control becomes danger. Judgment without accountability becomes power unchecked." Even the judge paused. The defense rested. Donahue remained silent throughout, but the prosecution wasn't done. They played the video again, this time slowly, pausing at key points. Each time, Donahue raised his voice. Each time Monica asked for clarification. Each time nothing was given back except volume and command. Then came the final question. Sergeant Donahue, why did you order her out of the car? He stared straight ahead. She seemed suspicious. Did she disobey you? She questioned me. Is that illegal? A long pause. No. Did she threaten you? No. Did she raise her voice? No. Then why escalate? No answer. Sergeant, did you know she was a lieutenant colonel? No. If you had, I might have handled it differently. The courtroom stilled. That was the moment. The one no cross-examination could undo. The one that peeled back everything. Because it wasn't about safety. It was about perception. He didn't see rank that night. He didn't see leadership. He saw a woman in a car asking for reasons, and that was enough to treat her like a problem. The trial wasn't over, but the truth was no longer hidden. When court adjourned for the day, no one spoke. No one needed to. The record had spoken. 3 days passed before the jury returned. The courthouse was quieter than before. No uniforms this time. No off-duty officers in the gallery. Just a handful of observers, a couple of local reporters in the back row, and 2 teams seated on opposite sides of the room, one watching with quiet anticipation, the other bracing for impact. Donahue sat beside his lawyer, not moving much. His face held the same stillness he'd kept through the trial, but his grip on the table told the truth. Monica Rhodes sat behind her counsel, composed as always. She didn't scan the room. She didn't glance across the aisle. She kept her focus forward. Her hands rested on the folder that held nothing new, just everything that mattered. Judge Eleanor Gaines entered promptly, took her seat, and nodded toward the clerk. The verdict was in. In the matter of Rhodes v. Donahue, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff. No gasp, no whispers, just silence. The kind that lingers a few seconds longer than usual. The kind that fills a room with meaning instead of noise. The court ruled that Sergeant Donahue had violated Monica Rhodes's constitutional rights during an unlawful stop. His conduct did not align with department policy. His actions failed to meet the minimum standards expected of a public officer acting under color of law. There would be no criminal charges, but there would be accountability. The damages awarded totaled $35,000, compensatory, not symbolic, enough to mark the event in public record. Enough to send a message. The judge added that the ruling would be submitted to the Department of Justice and the Toledo Police Department for formal policy review. Procedures, training, escalation protocols, all of it was on the table. Donahue didn't react. His lawyer leaned in and muttered something low and fast, but he didn't nod, didn't blink. The ruling was final. The appeal would be filed, maybe. But the shift had already happened, and everyone in that courtroom could feel it. Monica didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. She gave a single nod, quiet inward, not to the judge, not to the jury, just to herself. It was over. Outside, cameras flashed. Donahue walked past them without speaking. He kept his folder close to his chest, head down, straight to his car. No statements, no questions answered. Just the sound of shoes on concrete and engines starting the distance. Inside, Monica checked her phone. One message. Short, from Ellis back at the base. You won. Case closed. Her attorney caught up to her in the hallway. You could have gone higher, she said, requested more damages, pushed harder. Monica shook her head. It wasn't about the money, she replied. The lawyer didn't push. She understood. This will follow him, she said. Monica nodded. It should. They didn't speak again until the parking lot. And even then, the goodbye was short. There was nothing left to debate. A week later, Donahue was suspended pending department review. His badge hadn't been pulled. Not yet. But rumors circulated. He might be reassigned, shifted to desk duty. Some said his career was over. Others said he'd just ride it out and move on. Either way, the untouchable image was gone. And it wasn't coming back. At Fort Banner, Monica returned to her routine without announcement. She didn't hold meetings about the trial. She didn't give interviews. She showed up to logistics briefings on time, reviewed field coordination plans, signed off on training schedules. But her team understood. They didn't need her to explain what happened. They'd seen the stillness in how she carried it, the way she moved forward without pause. Not to bury the moment, but to make it part of something larger. The story traveled without her, not as a scandal, not as gossip, but as a lesson. One that wasn't written down in training manuals, one that didn't need dramatic retellings. You don't always have to raise your voice to be heard. You don't have to unravel to prove something was wrong. Sometimes standing still is what changes the room. And even when the court ruled in her favor, Monica knew something else. Winning a verdict wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Because holding someone accountable is never just about the moment it happened. It's about what happens next. 2 months later, Monica Rhodes stood at the front of a classroom inside Fort Banner. The room was filled with new recruits, some still getting used to the weight of their uniforms, some barely used to saluting. They sat upright, waiting for a lecture on logistics or operational command. Instead, Monica closed the binder in front of her and let the moment stretch. She didn't talk about cargo chains or supply routes. She didn't list metrics or briefings. She asked a question. How many of you think a uniform earns you respect automatically? A few hands rose, some hesitant, some firm. She nodded slowly. I understand why you think that, but you're wrong. She let it land. Respect isn't sewn into fabric. It's not printed on a badge. It isn't included in the contract you signed. It's earned over time through choices when no one's watching. They listened, not out of obligation, but because the room had changed. The energy was sharper, quieter. A few leaned forward. No one moved. She spoke about power, about the difference between holding it and honoring it, about the weight that comes with the ability to make decisions that affect others. Not just on the battlefield, but in parking lots, offices, roads, and places where the rules blur. She didn't bring up the lawsuit by name. She didn't need to. But she told them what mattered. She told them that silence isn't always strength. That fear dresses itself up in many uniforms, sometimes even ones with rank. And that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's steady. Sometimes it's measured. Sometimes it hits record and waits. At the back of the room, a young recruit sat straighter, not because he was told to, because something inside shifted. When that officer stopped me, I could have shouted, she said. I could have made a scene. I could have backed down. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize. I didn't do any of those things. I recorded. I reported. I testified. She paused. That badge didn't make him invincible, and my rank didn't protect me. She let that settle. What protected me was the truth and the choice to stand by it. She closed the folder in front of her. The recruits sat in silence, not out of discipline, but because the weight of the words hadn't lifted yet. She stepped down without waiting for questions. In the hallway outside, a junior officer caught up with her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just walked beside her until they reached the stairs. She nodded once and kept moving. The news cycle never picked up the story. It wasn't viral. It didn't make national headlines. But inside certain halls, in meetings, in locker rooms, in training lectures, it stayed alive. At the Toledo precinct, Donahue's name didn't come up much anymore. Not openly, but his story traveled differently now. Through caution, through policy revisions, through quiet reviews of training footage that hadn't been watched in years. He hadn't been fired, not officially, but he wasn't what he'd been. People stopped calling him first when they needed backup. He spent more time at the desk. Fewer rookies asked him for advice. He still wore the badge, but it didn't wear the same. And when his name appeared on briefing rosters, the room didn't shift the way it used to. Back at Fort Banner, Monica sat in her office finishing an after-action report when Ellis stepped in. He dropped a file on her desk and nodded toward the hallway. Recruit Daniels, he said, asked if he could shadow your team during field week. She raised an eyebrow. Any reason? He said you made him rethink what leadership means. She didn't respond right away. She just added his name to the schedule. When Ellis left, she sat still for a moment. Outside the window, the base moved like it always did. Orders issued, units trained, gear inspected. Everything operated like clockwork. Nothing had changed. And yet, something had. Because somewhere in that machine, someone now understood that doing the right thing might not get you applause, but it might keep someone else from being silenced. That was enough. That had to be enough. Later that evening, as she walked through the empty halls toward the exit, her phone buzzed. A message. Just wanted to say thank you. That story, yours, helped me speak up last week when something felt off. Nothing big, but I didn't stay quiet. That was a first. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Some stories aren't meant to echo loudly. Some are meant to plant something and grow later. Because leadership isn't about control. It's about conscience. It's not the weight of a rank, it's what you do with it. And respect? It's not demanded, it's lived. It's spoken in rooms long after you've left them. And it doesn't come from power. It comes from knowing when to use it and when to stand still and let the truth speak. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to today's story. We deeply appreciate your presence and the attention you gave to every moment. This story, like many we share, reminds us that true leadership isn't about power or rank. It's about integrity, accountability, and standing up when it matters most. Sometimes the quietest actions echo the loudest over time. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect, we'd love your support. Simply hit the like button. It means more than you know. And please leave a comment below telling us what country you're watching from and how the story made you feel. Your words help build this global community of thoughtful listeners and learners. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a story that speaks to the heart, challenges the mind, and stays with you long after it ends. Your support keeps us going and encourages us to keep sharing powerful, real-world narratives that matter. Thank you again for being here with us today.